When I walked into the real estate office at 75, wearing simple clothes, the young agent looked down on me saying, "These houses are above your budget." At that moment, I touched the portfolio in my purse, my property collection worth over $50 million. But I wouldn't show him. First, I needed to teach him a lesson. Comment where you're watching from and stay until the end, because this isn't just a story about age discrimination. It's the biggest punishment for arrogance. My name is Eleanor. I'm 75 years old, and throughout my life, I've gotten used to people underestimating me. But this time was different. This time, I had power in my hands. I just wasn't showing it. It all started when I decided to sell my old house in Denver. I wanted to live in a small apartment in Boulder. More practical, less maintenance. But of course, no one knew that the small apartment in Boulder was actually a penthouse and already belonged to me. Oakwood Real Estate was one of Denver's most prestigious real estate firms. They were famous for their elegant offices on Highland Avenue, well-dressed agents, and expensive cars. Their slogan was, "Best of the best serve the best." And when I walked in there with my simple clothes, I didn't fit their definition of best. That day, I went wearing a simple cardigan, comfortable walking shoes, and a small handbag. I hadn't put on makeup, my hair was simply pulled back. I looked like a typical 75-year-old elderly woman, and that was exactly the image I wanted. When I entered through the glass doors of Oakwood Real Estate, the young girl at reception didn't even notice me. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, leather furniture, everything was screaming wealth and success. I quietly started waiting. After 10 minutes, a young man approached. Brad Richardson. Mid-30s, expensive suit, slicked back hair, confident smile. His name tag read, "Top Sales Agent 2023. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he said, but his tone was condescending, as if he was ready to give directions to a lost elderly woman. "Yes, I'd like to sell my house," I said quietly. Brad's smile became forced. "Of course. What kind of property are we talking about?" "It's on Elmwood Avenue. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, large yard." Brad did a quick mental calculation. Elmwood Avenue was a respectable neighborhood, but not luxury. Middle class. Probably $300,000 to $400,000 range. "I see. And what's your timeline for selling?" "As soon as possible." "I want to move to Boulder." Brad's interest decreased even more. Moving to Boulder meant downsizing, probably a small apartment, low budget. Small commission. "Well, let me introduce you to one of our newer agents. They handle more modest properties." When he used that word modest, something tightened inside me, but my expression didn't change. "Actually, I was hoping to work with your best agent. I heard you're quite successful." Brad was pleased with the compliment, but still dismissive. "Ma'am, I typically handle luxury properties. $1 million homes, estates, commercial buildings. I'm not sure I'm the right fit for your situation." "What makes you think you're not the right fit?" Brad became uncomfortable. He hadn't expected a direct question. "Well, no offense, but my clients usually have different financial situations." "Different how?" "More substantial. You know, people who can afford luxury properties, investment properties, multiple homes." At that moment, I was laughing inside. Multiple homes? I owned 20 of them. But instead of telling Brad this, I decided to continue the game. "I understand, but could you at least show me what's available in Boulder, just to get an idea?" Brad sighed. "Sure, but I should warn you up front. Boulder properties are very expensive, especially if you're looking at anything decent." Brad turned to his computer, opened Boulder listings. The first few properties he showed, all were mine. Ironically, he was about to show me my own homes. Here's what we have, he said, turning the screen toward me. But honestly, these are all out of most people's price range. When I saw the first property, I recognized it. 1247 Pine Street. Beautiful Victorian house. I had completely restored it 3 years ago. The asking price was $2.8 million. This one is lovely, I said innocently. Brad barely glanced. Ma'am, this house is $2.8 million. That's probably more than most people see in their lifetime. It is expensive, I agreed. Tell me more about it. Brad reluctantly started explaining, but was clearly going through the motions. 4 bedrooms, restored Victorian architecture, premium location. Then he stopped. Look, ma'am, I don't want to waste your time. These properties are really not in your budget range. How do you know what my budget is? Brad looked at me like I'd asked an obvious question. Well, I mean, looking at your situation. My situation? Brad was getting frustrated. Obviously an elderly woman on a fixed income, probably Social Security, maybe a small pension. Why was I making this difficult? Ma'am, let me be direct. These homes are for wealthy individuals. People with significant assets, investment portfolios, multiple income streams. Not for regular people. Regular people? You know what I mean? Actually, I did know. I looked regular, elderly, probably poor. In Brad's world, successful wealthy people looked a certain way. Expensive clothes, luxury cars, young, confident. I fit none of those stereotypes. Well, could you show me something more in my range? I asked. Brad was relieved. Finally, realistic expectations. Of course. Let me look at properties under $500,000. He scrolled through different listings. Smaller homes, older properties, some needing repairs. His enthusiasm slightly increased. At least these were achievable sales. Now this is more reasonable, he said, showing a modest ranch house. $380,000. Move-in ready, perfect for someone looking to downsize. I studied the listing carefully. It's nice, but quite small. What about something a bit larger? Brad showed a few more properties, each time explaining why they were good value and perfect for my situation. But I kept asking for bigger, better properties. After 30 minutes, Brad was clearly frustrated. Ma'am, I'm not sure what you're looking for. You say you want larger properties, but those are expensive. You need to be realistic about your budget. What would you consider realistic? For someone in your situation? Probably $200,000 to $400,000 maximum, and that's being generous. Someone in my situation? I repeated. What exactly is my situation? Brad did an uncomfortable shuffle. He'd gone too far, but couldn't take it back. Look, I'm just trying to be helpful. I work with a lot of elderly clients, and usually what? Usually they're on fixed incomes, limited resources, looking to downsize for financial reasons. I smiled gently. I see. And you assume I fit that profile? Well, don't you? Instead of answering, I stood up. Thank you for your time, Brad. This has been very educational. Brad was confused. Wait, don't you want to continue looking? I can show you more affordable options. I think I've seen enough for today. As I walked toward the door, Brad called after me. Ma'am, if you change your mind about realistic expectations, feel free to come back. Realistic expectations. That phrase echoed as I left the office. That evening, I sat in my Boulder penthouse, the one worth $4.2 million that I'd paid cash for 2 years ago, and made phone calls. First call, my attorney, Patricia Wells. Patricia, I need you to research Oakwood real estate, ownership structure, financial situation, any legal issues? Second call, my financial advisor, Michael Chen. Michael, I want to make some real estate investments. Specifically, I'm interested in acquiring a certain real estate firm. Third call, my property manager, Sarah Johnson. Sarah, compile complete portfolio documentation. I want everything: property values, rental income, tax records, the works. Brad Richardson had no idea what he'd triggered. Patricia called back the next day. Eleanor, Oakwood Real Estate is an interesting case. They're successful but heavily leveraged. Lots of debt, big overhead costs. The owner, Robert Oakwood, has been looking for investors or potential buyers. They're profitable, but cash poor. Perfect. Michael had different news. Eleanor, acquiring Oakwood would be straightforward. They're valued around $8 million, but would probably sell for $6 million in the right circumstances. You have liquid assets to cover it easily. Even more perfect. Sarah delivered my portfolio documentation. 20 properties across the Denver and Boulder area. Total value, $52 million. Annual rental income, $3.2 million. All paid in full, no mortgages. Looking at those numbers, I remembered Brad's assumption about my fixed income situation. My plan was simple, but satisfying. Step 1, acquire Oakwood Real Estate. Step 2, become Brad's boss. Step 3, teach him about assumptions. The acquisition process took 2 weeks. Robert Oakwood was thrilled to sell. He'd been struggling with cash flow, unable to pay high salaries to keep top agents. My offer of $6.5 million, cash, was immediate relief. Mrs. Wilson? He said. I used my maiden name for the purchase. This is a godsend. Are you planning to keep the current staff? We'll evaluate everyone individually, I replied diplomatically. The day I took ownership, I called a staff meeting. The entire Oakwood team gathered in the conference room: 12 agents, 3 support staff, 1 manager. I walked in wearing the same simple cardigan and comfortable shoes, carrying the same small handbag. But this time, I also carried a folder with their employment contracts. Good morning, everyone. I'm Eleanor Wilson, your new owner. Silence. They hadn't expected an elderly woman in simple clothes to be their new boss. Brad sat near the back, looking confused. I could see recognition dawning. Familiar face, but couldn't place where. I want to meet with each of you individually to discuss your future here. But first, I'd like to address our approach to customer service. I pulled out a recording device. I have here a conversation that took place in this office 2 weeks ago. I think it illustrates some problems we need to address. I played the recording of my conversation with Brad. His voice filled the room. These properties are for wealthy individuals, not for regular people. You need to be realistic about your budget. People in your situation. Brad's face went pale. Now he remembered. I was the elderly woman he'd dismissed. Customer service, I continued, means serving all customers with respect, regardless of their appearance, age, or assumed financial status. We judge people by their character and treat everyone with dignity. Brad raised a shaking hand. Ma'am, I can explain. Please call me Mrs. Wilson. And yes, I'd like you to explain. In private. After the meeting ended, Brad remained behind. His confidence had completely evaporated. Mrs. Wilson, I had no idea. I thought... You thought what, Brad? I thought you were just... You looked like... Like what? Brad struggled. How do you tell your new boss that you assumed she was a poor elderly woman not worth your time? I made assumptions. I was wrong. What assumptions? I assumed you didn't have money. I assumed you couldn't afford luxury properties. I assumed you weren't a serious buyer. Based on what? Based on your appearance, your age, your clothes? I see. And in your experience, wealthy people don't dress simply? Usually not. I smiled. Brad, let me share something. My outfit today cost $89 total. Cardigan from Target, shoes from Walmart, handbag from a thrift store. But my watch? I rolled up my sleeve to show a modest-looking timepiece. This was my grandmother's. It's worth $15,000. It's a vintage Patek Philippe. Brad's eyes widened. And that small handbag you dismissed? It contains keys to 20 properties worth over $50 million. I opened my handbag and pulled out a thick folder. Here's my portfolio. Every property I own, every rental income statement, every tax record. Would you like to review it? Brad stared at the documents, speechless. The house on Elmwood Avenue you thought was my only property? It's one of 4 houses I own on that street. The Boulder properties you said were out of my price range? I own 6 of them. I leaned back in my chair. Brad, you're an excellent salesperson when you want to be. Your sales numbers prove it, but you lost a potential multi-million-dollar client because you judged a book by its cover. Mrs. Wilson, I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. Is there any way to make this right? I considered this. Brad was learning, and mistakes can be valuable teaching moments. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to undergo training on customer service, bias recognition, and respectful communication. You'll shadow our best agents and learn how to serve all clients professionally. Brad nodded eagerly. Additionally, you're going to help me with a special project. I want to buy 3 more properties in the Boulder area. You're going to be my agent, but this time, you'll treat me with the same respect you'd give any serious buyer. Of course, absolutely. And Brad? Your commission on these sales will be substantial. Consider it an expensive lesson in not judging people. Over the next month, Brad transformed. He researched every property thoroughly, prepared detailed presentations, treated me like a valued client. His attitude toward other clients changed too. He became more patient, more respectful, more inclusive. The 3 Boulder properties I purchased through Brad netted him $180,000 in commissions. The best month he'd ever had. But the real satisfaction came from the cultural change at Oakwood. Word spread quickly about the new owner who'd been dismissed by her own agent. Staff became more conscious of their biases, more welcoming to all clients. We implemented new policies. All clients treated with equal respect, regardless of appearance. No assumptions about financial capacity. Professional service for everyone who walks through the door. Regular training on unconscious bias. Business improved dramatically. When people feel welcomed and respected, they remember. They return. They refer friends. 6 months later, Brad knocked on my office door. Mrs. Wilson, do you have a minute? Of course, Brad. Come in. I wanted to thank you. For what? For giving me a second chance. For teaching me instead of just firing me. I've learned more in the past 6 months than in my entire previous career. What have you learned? That wealth comes in many forms. That respect should be automatic, not earned. That my job is to serve people, not judge them. And that some of the most successful people are also the most humble. You could have destroyed me that first day. Instead, you helped me become better. I smiled. Brad, success isn't about putting others down to lift yourself up. Real success is about elevating everyone around you. Mrs. Wilson, can I ask you something personal? Sure. How did you build such an impressive portfolio? You must have an amazing story. I leaned back, remembering. Brad, I started with nothing. Immigrant family, worked multiple jobs, saved every penny, bought my first property when I was 35, a tiny duplex in a bad neighborhood. Lived in one unit, rented the other. Used that income to buy a second property, then a third. That's incredible. It took 40 years of careful investing, reinvesting, learning the market. I never looked wealthy because I didn't spend money on looking wealthy. I spent it on building wealth. And now you own 20 properties? 23, actually. I bought 3 more since we started working together. Brad laughed. I still can't believe I told you those properties were out of your price range. Brad, you weren't wrong to be realistic about budgets. You were wrong to assume what my budget was without asking. What would have happened if I'd simply asked? I would have told you I was looking for investment properties in the $2 to $5 million range. You would have had the biggest commission month of your career. Brad shook his head. I almost threw away the opportunity of a lifetime because of my prejudices. But you didn't throw it away, Brad. You learned from it. That's what matters. Today, Oakwood Real Estate is Denver's most inclusive, successful firm. We've won awards for customer service and community engagement. Brad is now a senior agent and trains new hires on respectful customer service. And me? I still dress simply, still carry a small handbag, still look like a regular 75-year-old woman. But now I own 25 properties worth $58 million, and I'm a respected businesswoman in Denver's real estate community. The moral? Never judge a person by their appearance, age, or assumptions about their circumstances. You never know who you're talking to. They might be exactly the person who could change your life. That day, when I walked into the real estate office at 75, wearing simple clothes, the young agent looked down on me saying, "These houses are above your budget." At that moment, I had touched the portfolio in my purse, my property collection worth over $50 million. But I hadn't shown him. First, I needed to teach him a lesson. And sometimes, the best lessons come wrapped in humble packages. Brad learned that wealth whispers while poverty shouts. That real power doesn't need to announce itself. That success is measured not by what you appear to have, but by what you've actually built. Most importantly, he learned that every person deserves respect, regardless of how they look or what you assume about their situation. Because you never know. That elderly woman in simple clothes might just be your next boss.